Today on the We Invested podcast, we have Aaron Rubin, and he is the founder and partner at Rubin, and Papier Wealth. Aaron, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Excited to be here.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm looking forward to learning more about, this company that you've created. But before we get started, would you mind letting the people know where they can find your company on the internet or on social media?
Oh my gosh, we're all over the internet. So obviously we got the website wrpwealth.com, and today we'll give a little bit of background on what we do, and that's a lot of stock options. So if you have stock options, if that's part of your life, then definitely check us out. We've got tons of blogs, on tax and wealth and all that. Of course, the Facebook thing, Twitter, WRP Wealth at WRP Wealth, and then we're on TikTok now, which I'm really excited about. That's sort of my new thing. IPO graphs.
Nice.
IPO graphs. So it's we have some fun there.
Awesome. So, let's just start it from the beginning and talk a little bit about, where you're from and where you grew up.
Okay. Oh, good. We're going way back. So I'm originally from the Chicagoland area. So grew up in the northern suburbs. So an avid Bears fan. I took the over. I took the over this year when I was in Nevada. I know you're out in Reno. So whenever I'm out there, I place bets on the Bears or against the Bears, depending on how bad they are. And a White Sox fan. So one of the few in the country. And yeah, grew up in the suburbs, and eventually ended up in California for school, and then after that went to law school, and then back to California again. So I've sort of crisscrossed all over.
And so, how would you say growing up in the Chicago area impacted your outlook on life and success?
You know what, I think it impacted me a lot. So I grew up, I'm dyslexic, and thankfully, my parents recognized it at an early age, and got me the help I needed early on, which I probably wouldn't be where I am today without that, for sure. And grew up in a semi-affluent area of Chicago, and it was again, it was great. It was great.
So, you mentioned that you moved out to California for school and to kind of further your studies. So how was that transition for you, from Chicago out to California and just kind of experiencing that different culture?
It was good. Where I went to school was in Southern California. For those who are really into it, in Claremont, California, which is right in between Pasadena and San Bernardino. And I think for me, I was ready to get out of Northern Illinois, and there was nothing wrong with it. It was just I need to go do something different, and I needed to sort of, and my parents are gonna listen to the podcast and they're gonna hate me, and need to get away from my family for a little bit, be a little more independent, and it was the right thing for me at the right time, and I think it's interesting. I think that for some people they're not ready yet, and they go anyway, and they have either bad experience or they don't finish, and I think that's super detrimental. But for me, I was ready, completely ready.
I mean, and was it a huge culture shock for you, or shift? Being introduced to the better weather and just different lifestyle.
Yeah, it was. I'll tell you how I stumbled upon Claremont. So I went to Claremont McKenna College, and so I took my SATs back in the day. Wait, a long time ago, and you check the box, on your SATs, send me information about colleges I might be interested in. And so I checked the box, which was a terrible idea, in hindsight, because I just got inundated with materials from all over the country. And it just got to the point where I'd open up the envelope. I know what it was. I opened the envelope, and if I didn't like the picture on the cover, I just tossed it. And then I opened up the one from Claremont McKenna College, and in there, and on that in that envelope was a brochure, and the cover of the brochure was these kids on this green grass in shorts and tank tops. In the background, there was snow on the mountains, and I went, all right, I can do that. And so that's sort of how how I got into it. And then of course I discovered it was actually a very good school and all that. And they had a really good track program. I did track all 4 years in college, uh, and um, and yeah, it was nice. It was nice. I appreciated my parents the first time. Now this was before 9/11, for those old enough to remember. Right before 9/11, my parents would show up in winter, when I came back for winter break, and they'd have like the huge like parka, waiting for me like at the gate. That's
Right.
when when people used to be able to meet you at the gate, and I just remember that, obviously up until September 11th.
That's incredible. I mean, and running track, especially at a collegiate level, that's not an easy task to accomplish. So I mean, would you say that having that collegiate athletic experience also kind of helped add to the drive and the grit that you use in running your company today?
Yeah, I would say that's true. I did sports like my entire life. That was super important to me. So like I think what really sort of taught me everything I needed to know in some respects was wrestling in high school, and all that discipline that comes with wrestling, and the not eating and the working out 3-4 hours a day. I mean, that was crazy. And you look back on it, you push yourself mentally, you push yourself physically, and when you do that, you realize what you can accomplish, and then you take that and you go to that next level of competition. I didn't wrestle in college, but again I continued track, and it was every day, you go in, you work 3 hours a day on your sport, and then you turn around and you work on your studies. You spend all Saturdays, when the season starts, so spring semester, just doing track. And in the off season, right, the people that really want to get ahead, there's no off season there. I mean, I didn't have, I started like, I showed up like my freshman day one, and I met and the coach was there, and and he was in there, and I said, all right, I want to start this. And so I would, you don't work out like 3 hours every day like in the off season, but you got to put the time in, and that's what I did. And it's definitely prepared me for what I do, and that is there's no off button, like so for those in the podcast world, it's a quarter to seven here on the West Coast. And again, we don't stop, and I'm sure you don't stop either. It's there's no such thing as the off season, and again, that's where it goes.
Exactly. Exactly. So I mean, let's just kind of transition and talk more about the company that you've built and that you're growing today. So, my question is, what is Werber, Rubin, and Papier Wealth?
So we're a wealth management firm, and I say that wealth management, and Wes, I know you're in the industry. It means different things to different people, and the way we all got started, is, so my father-in-law started the firm back in the early 1990s. The ever entrepreneur that he is, and is growing it, doing tax and wealth and all that, and really building a tremendous practice. And then I came along in the early 2000s, and you said, you got the right background, for what I'm doing. Do you want to do that too? And at that time, I was in law school, and um, I looked around at all the people that were about to graduate, and they were they're very smart people, and they're going to get great law jobs, and they were going to work 100+ hour weeks, and grind and do all that. And then my father-in-law, he golfed 3 days a week, and he had like a really nice house in the Bay Area. And I went, you know what, I like that better. And so I spent 3 years in public accounting, and then I joined him in 2009, and we worked together for a good 8 years, and then we decided it was time to bring in another partner, and so we merged with another firm affluent wealth in the Bay Area, and we got another member on our team, plus his admin, who was really high skilled, and and we were working together great. And my father-in-law decided that he really wanted to wind down his tax practice because the taxes are. I did 3 years in public accounting, so the whole thing is a horrible grind. So he decided to start winding it down, which is sort of what he did. And then one day, our new partner Jason, came in and said, "Hey, I have this guy at this company called Zoom, and the company's not public, and we're trying to do some strategy. Some of it involves tax. Would you mind sitting in?" And I did, and we were talking, and I was finding myself, saying things that were really impactful to him about his tax and about wealth and divestment strategy. And then we got a whole bunch of other Zoom clients that came in as a result of that. And then, and I think before that time, we were sort of that traditional wealth firm where we were trying to sort of be all things to all people. We were that, okay, are you retiring? All right. Do you have a pulse? Okay. Do you have, well, at that point, I mean, I think our minimum was 500,000. You have $500,000. Okay, you're in. And I think once we realized our strength, and that was the tax and the wealth combined, we said, wait a second, like we're doing the wrong thing. Like we need to focus, and we need to focus on what we do really, really great. And what we do really, really great is IPO planning before the IPO actually happens. And that's what we're going to do. And so, 3-4 years ago, we decided that was our direction. And from there on out, that's what we focused on, that we've been laser focused since that time. And I have not regretted it in the least. So, our firm it meets at the intersection of tax and wealth, and trying to figure out how can we get the best after-tax result for our clients, not just the day of IPO, but can we set things up beforehand that really make an impact? And that's what our firm does.
So, I mean, what gave you that spark to want to get started in the financial industry? Is this something that you've always been interested in, or is it something that kind of developed over time as you observed the different routes and different options you could take?
Yeah, so I started in accounting, and my father-in-law, right after I met him, and right after my wife and I decided to get married, he said, "Here, I want you to read this book." And the book was A Prudent Investor's Guide to Beating the Market, and it was a book that he had written several years beforehand. And I had never, my investing experience at that point had been like, by the way, I have a book, by the way, Financial Adulting. I tell the story about a relative of mine who was like supposed to be like the stock market whiz. And so like my only exposure to the market or the stock market was him giving me like 10 shares of Wrigley stock for my bar mitzvah, right? When I'm 13. And then I was really into comic books. So I bought like a couple 20 shares of Marvel Corporation when it was a publicly traded company before Disney bought it, before it went into bankruptcy. And like that was it. I hadn't had any exposure at all. And so I read this book he gave me, A Prudent Investor's Guide, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is way more interesting and way more academic than I thought. And I got super interested in it from that. And then I went to a couple conferences. Again, Wesley, I don't do too much inside baseball, for your listeners, but I went to Dimensional Funds Advisors, who you are probably familiar with. They have a big conference in Austin every few months, and I went to there, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like real. This is not like just picking individual stocks and hoping they do well. There's an actual ethos behind this thing, and actual academics, and I was just like, this is for me.
So you mentioned that you did some pre-IPO planning and tax strategy planning for a company by the name of Zoom. So, I mean, which is pretty cool because it's what we're talking on right now, what we're communicating
Right.
through right now. So I mean, at the time, did you did you have an idea of the impact that this company will have on the world, globally? And how do you feel now knowing that you've helped, um, make this huge company public?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as much credit as I want to give myself, I don't think I've done that. But, did we have an idea of how big Zoom was going to be? No, but everyone at Zoom felt pretty strong about their company. Now they didn't think it was going to. I mean, Zoom ended up at the height of the pandemic. I think it was like $400 a share, something in that neighborhood, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, when they were seeing us, the 409A, the valuations that we were seeing was close to like 25 a share. Um, and so, when they went public, the price kind of went up and then it dipped back down. And so it sort of settled in right before the pandemic at around $50 a share. And so I was like, okay, Zoom it was, I'd never used it before. And then I started using it. I was like, okay, well, this is a pretty slick interface and it's well done. Um, and and so did I know it was going to be like what Zoom became? No. I grew up, with the earliest was like Microsoft had like this video conferencing built into Windows back in the early 2000s. It was crap. I mean, it was just terrible. And so it was not even usable for the most part. And then and then Skype came out. And that was good for like, talking with your grandma, or
Right.
talking with your mom and dad, but it was not a tool that you could use, for real business. And then we did Cisco, and they still have what's their web Cisco. They have their own version of WebEx, right? WebEx, that's a Cisco product. They had WebEx, and it was fine. It was clunky at times, and then I used Zoom. And I was like, oh, this is a pretty good product. Um, you know, I've and again, I don't do it. I don't guess at individual stocks. By the way, I think for Zoom, I think the problem has always been there's someone else out there that's going to build a better mousetrap. And they have a slick product and they've done some voice integration with it for business. And actually we tried it, didn't really like it. So we ended up going with a different company. But I still use Zoom, for running meetings. So I don't know. I mean, at some point, Microsoft's going to rip off the technology, and their platform is really big. So yeah, but I had no idea Zoom was going to be like what Zoom was.
So, what would you say is the worst IPO tax mistake that you've seen?
Oh my gosh, so many, so many. I think I'll say the first tax mistake that I see is people not planning for the alternative minimum tax. And so when you exercise a stock option, if it's an incentive stock option, even if it's public or non-public, that it has a fair market value. If it's public, you know what it is because it shows up, on Yahoo Finance. If it's private, right, there is a valuation that's done usually once a year, sometimes more often, that an appraiser comes in and tells you what the value of the company is. Now you have a strike price, that's what you're going to pay for it. And the difference between the strike price and the fair market value as determined by that appraiser is what we call in the tax industry the bargain element, right? That's the paper gain on the purchase. And for regular income tax purposes, you don't see it on the front of your return. If you have we'll say a normal tax return, and you pull out, page one on your tax return, you're not going to see incentive stock option. It's not there. It's buried in the return. Is where you put that number. It's on the AMT form. That difference shows up on AMT, which is a different tax calculation than regular income tax. It's a lot more complicated in some respects, where essentially you take your regular taxable income on your tax return, and the government says, all right, well, all this, all these options you exercise, all that paper gain, well, we want you to put it on a different form, and we're going to tax you on it there instead. And so there's people who don't realize that, and they run themselves up huge tax bills, and they don't know until the next year, and then they don't have the money to cover it. And I've seen that a couple times, and it sucks. It's terrible. Um, the other mistake that I see, again, it has to do with AMT, is that people will exercise their option. The time, and because the AMT is calculated on a calendar year basis, they'll hold it past the calendar year. The price will sink, but they need to raise the money for the tax. And then they can't raise enough money because the price has fallen so hard. That happened a lot in 2001, 2000, or I guess before the tech bust, but so maybe 1999, where people were exercising their options, running up huge tax bills, being like, well, what do I care? I'm going to sell this thing for 3 or 10x or whatever it is that I paid, that whatever the value was when I exercised it. And then when that didn't materialize, and even worse, it went backwards. People really got burned on that. So that's probably the worst, is not planning for the tax. The problem, once you have IPO shares and once you start exercising and thinking about what you're going to do, don't do your own tax return. Don't do it. I mean, yeah. So now some preparers are better equipped to handle that than others. So for us, if we're doing someone's tax return, we're charging $1,500. But I'll tell you, if you're doing a bunch of stuff with stock options, it's worth your money, for sure.
I mean, and is that where, a lot of your clients see a lot of that value just by your company being able to handle these complex tax returns and things of that nature?
Yeah. I think one of the great things that I'm able to do and our partners at our firm is, we can do a little bit of a back of an envelope, calculation, right? You're talking with the client, be like, hey, oh yeah, I'm gonna exercise, 100,000 shares. Oh, really? But how much is it going to cost you? Oh, it's only going to cost me $20,000. Really? What's the fair market value of that? Oh, 5 million. Oh, well, you have a tax problem, friend. Here, let me tell you, it's going to be about, and you'll tell them, I've told people, yeah, when you did this, that was a $200,000 tax bill you created for yourself. And okay, now we got to figure it out. Or if I get them before they do it, it's like, hey, if you do this, you're gonna pay lots of money in tax. Are you sure you want to do this right now? And we have that conversation.
So you spoke on, one of the worst IPO tax mistakes that you've seen, but now I want to ask, what is the best investment that you've seen?
Yeah, so I have a client at Coinbase, or I'm sorry, he was at Coinbase, and I've actually I talked to a number of people at Coinbase before they didn't have an IPO, they had a direct listing, which is slightly different. But it was interesting to hear all the Coinbase people talk, because the ones that I spoke to were like, as soon as I can, I'm selling all my shares. And which, it sort of tells you something a little bit about a company, because as far as I know, nobody was bullish on Coinbase. Nobody. And they came out direct listing and their price went up 30, I think 20-30%, because I think it was at 250, and then I think it got up to like 3 to 10, maybe a little more. So I mean, it went up, and a lot of people said, well, I don't trust that Coinbase or the crypto market. I'm just going to sell it all day one. And damn it, if that wasn't the best decision you ever made. So I think the people that follow their intuition, who know their company well, they have a better shot, right? And it's tough to see people be over bullish, and again, when Wesley, you talk to people, they always think that everything's going to go up and everything's going to be great, and so you have to temper some of that. And so again, we try to do that, but the Coinbase people, they went in eyes wide open, and the ones that I talked to, they did pretty well.
So you mentioned that you typically try to stay away from picking individual stocks. So the question I want to ask is, what investments do you recommend to people who don't have an advisor?
For those that don't have an advisor, it depends. It depends on the vehicle. So if it's an IRA or a Roth, again, I tend to use mutual funds, and that's what I recommend people to do. If it's a taxable account, so once you get taxed on the dividends, capital gains, again, it's usually an ETF. some sort because it's a little more tax efficient. And you know, I think, you know, I follow the words of Warren Buffett, and I think everyone should too, you know, and that is, you know, most investors, both institutional and individual, are better off getting a low cost, well diversified mutual fund. That's what Warren Buffett said, and that guy knows stuff, you know. And so you know, I tell people, hey, you know, if you don't have an advisor and you don't want an advisor, you know, obviously I'm biased. I think you should have an advisor if you can. But if you don't want one, don't need one, you know, that's your. In my book, I call them DIY investors. You know, if you're a DIYer, you know, go to Vanguard. Vanguard's perfectly fine. I would avoid their active ETFs and their active mutual funds because they do some of those. Know what you're buying, you know, and you know, I often talk to people and I talk to them about, you know, like things like VTI, you know, the total market index, the BSV, which is the bond short term. I think that's what it is, the bond short term index as well. And so I mean, you can construct a perfectly acceptable portfolio that way.
What should someone at a pre-IPO, or when should someone at a pre-IPO company contact an advisor?
I think when they start thinking about exercising shares is the right time. You know, the part of the issue is that, and you know, when you're dealing with companies who are in their A round, right? They just got, you know, the first big round of funding, right? I mean, you get funding along the way, the pre-seed, seed, but A round is usually, you know, when you start getting, you know, millions of dollars for the company, and you know, the problem is a lot of companies don't even make it out of A round, and so, you know, a lot of people don't want to put the money into their stock options when things are so uncertain. So usually, you know, people start feeling a little bit more certain about their company, and they really start thinking about exercising once the company hits the B round, certainly the C round. You know, because by that time they probably are getting, you know, a decent amount of revenue in, and they actually have a viable product. And you know, again, there's some things you're not going to be able to do, you know, in terms of qualified small business stock and other, you know, fun tax things, likely by the end of the C round. But you know, I would say once you start thinking about the exercise, it's a good time to talk to an advisor, maybe. And again, for us, I would love to talk to everybody. You know, I'd love to bring everyone as a client, you know, in the A round and the B round. I can't do it. There's not enough. There's not enough people. There's not enough revenue in it. I wish I could, but you know, again, the more planning you can do around it, the better.
So, you know, you mentioned that you know, you would love to bring everyone on, but it's just not physically possible. It's not enough time. It's not enough resources. Not enough people. What are there any certain qualifications that you do look for, you know, when bringing on a new pre-IPO company or a new client?
Yeah, so we look for companies, you know, that are usually in their C round.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you know, which, you know, at that point they're likely going to be acquired, or perhaps, you know, go IPO. You know, so for us, a C round client, and you know, a lot of the clients we work with, they don't have a lot of current assets. So, you know, we have to look at that, and you know, we have to know, especially if you're in the C round, we're going to be working for free for 3 to 4 years at least. You know, and so, you know, we look for, okay, you know, the person, you know, should have, you know, 100,000 shares at least, of their company, because again, if we're going to work for free and perhaps not get anything out of it, you know, we need to underwrite, you know, our clients more carefully. You know, and obviously D&E round, you know, you know, it's a lot sooner. It still could be 2 years off. I mean, look, I have three clients that we were fully expecting, you know, huge IPOs this year. We were talking about in 2021. It's not freaking happening, you know. And so again, but that's the risk that we take as a firm, because you know, sometimes it's not going to happen, and sometimes you end up at a WeWork, right? Where the whole thing freaking implodes the week before. And I
Right.
mean, and that's the risk you take as an advisor when you work with that pre-IPO space. So again, we have to underwrite, all of our clients and see where they are.
What is the importance of having a good team around you, and how did you focus on building yours?
Um, a good team is so crucial. We because we brought the tax in house, we could train and we could kind of cross train between tax and wealth and really become knowledgeable that way. We of course have a full stable um, of estate planning attorneys that specialize in working with high net worth individuals who, again, some are big into charitable trusts and know a lot about that, and some are just for people that you got 10 million bucks. That's great. You're not going to start creating foundations with that money, but you still need help. So I mean, again, it's you need to have the right tool for every job, and so that's what we have. So again, estate planning attorney is crucial. We have the tax in house. Insurance people, we have a couple insurance people that we work with. Some do really high end stuff, and some are just, hey, you need long term disability. Have you thought about that? So again, you just need to build out that Rolodex. And I think that's a lot of our value proposition is that we get people to the right spot. I don't write insurance. I don't want to write insurance. I used to write insurance. I used to do that a little bit, and I think for some people I think it works. With their company. Again, and I think that's fine. But once you get to a certain level, like I mean, why would I try to write some multi-million-dollar policy that is pretty complex, or why would I do that sort of thing when I can have someone that knows that like the back of their hand. And so I rely heavily, on my team. And sometimes I just call them out of the blue and I'm like, hey, I got a question, and they can help me think through some problems that I might be getting into. And, they don't charge me. And then they call me and they have questions. I don't charge them. And it's just, and it all works out. So again, having that right team it's great.
So, you mentioned that, your company can be found everywhere on the internet, from, its website to Facebook, Twitter, and now TikTok. So, why was it important for you guys to kind of expand and branch out onto these new social media platforms?
Again, we try to get our message out as much as we can. So, like all of our blogs, right, are all posted to not to TikTok, to Facebook and to Twitter, and to LinkedIn. Because I mean, you want to keep in front of people, especially I think LinkedIn's super important for that reason. It keeps you in front of the people who are going to refer you business and people that have clients that you need or you want. And every time you post something, they see your name again, and you never know when they see your name and they just had a conversation with somebody about stock options, and wouldn't you know it, you come to top of mind. That's what it's really all about, keeping top of mind with people. And so the more you post, the more people see it, the more top of mind you're going to be.
You spoke about a book that you had out that you've written, and I believe the title was Financial Adulting. Is that correct?
That's right.
So, what was the vision behind writing this book?
Oh gosh, it's a great question. Certainly wasn't to make money. I will tell you that. It was. I'll tell you, it was a pet project. By and large, I sort of always wanted to write a book, and I went to lunch. I was I'd just been in the industry for like maybe a couple of years, and I went to lunch with some of my old CPA friends, and one of my CPA friends, who's super smart, and his wife's super smart. And they're great people, um, and I was talking to him, and he said to me, "Hey, I got a great insurance policy." Right. And Wesley, I should have looked you up on LinkedIn. I apologize. Hopefully I'm not going to offend you with anything I say. But if someone comes to you and says, I have a great insurance, if people start like loving their insurance, like something's wrong, right? I mean, like nobody like loves their insurance. No one loves paying premiums, and and no one loves that. So when he said that to me, like alarm bells just started like flashing in my mind. Like, wait a second, no. I said, hey, well that's really great. And like, why don't you tell me about that insurance policies? Oh, it's awesome. I have life protection with retirement income. And I was like, you bought an annuity, and he's like, no, I didn't. I'm like, yeah, it's what you did. He's like, no, it's, I mean, and obviously whoever had sold him the whatever policy, and it wasn't necessarily an annuity, but it was, whether it was a VU, whether it was a variable universal life or, a whole life policy. I mean, I couldn't tell you, or with an income rider on it. I don't know, but it was something of that ilk, right? Something of the nature of one of those products. And, I thought, holy moly, if this guy doesn't know, I mean, this guy's super smart. If he doesn't know that, like, what about the guy like who's like, washing dishes? What about the person like who isn't as educated? Not that they're stupid, they're just not as educated. Like what about those people? I'm like, I gotta write this book. I gotta tell people like about this, and I mean the story does pop up, in my book. But I started writing and I said, okay, like what does life start with? It starts with a budget. So chapter 1, budgeting. What do people pay the most of? Once they're making some money, they pay tax. Chapter 2 is tax. And I go through all the way, through estate planning, at the very end, and charitable giving and that sort of thing. And I wrote it so people could be more knowledgeable, in general.
I mean, you said that this was something that you kind of always wanted to do. So, once you accomplished this task, I mean, was that a good feeling for you? Was it like a proud moment? How did you feel, finishing that final copy, getting it edited and finally putting it out to the world?
It was, I imagine it's all like running a marathon. I mean, look, I don't run. Right. When I said I did track, I did field, right? I was a thrower. I threw big things far. Like that was what I did. I don't run. So, but when you see those marathoners, like especially like the high level ones, right? They come across that finish line and they've accomplished something amazing. I mean, I can't imagine running 26.2, whatever it is, 26.2 miles. That is beyond my comprehension. I went so like in the Bay Area, we have this thing called beta breakers, and basically you walk from the bay side of San Francisco all the way to the ocean side. And it's like a little over 8 miles. I did that 1 year. 1 year. I mean, I nearly died in that 1 year. It was like you're walking for like an hour, and you're like, oh man, this has got to be done soon. And then you see like mile marker 3, and you're like, what the hell? So so I think about those marathon runners. I mean, and they sort of cross the finish line, they're dead. I mean, now they've accomplished something great, but they're dead. That's sort of how I felt. Because I wrote this book myself. I from I didn't hire a ghostwriter. I did it. I got a lot of editing, believe me, and it needed editing, and I had people help me from all over the place, because you can't. It's hard to. In my opinion, you almost never do things by yourself, and you rely on others. And so, I had accomplished something, but man, I was tired. And then you're supposed to go out there and and market that book and and I'm just I didn't have a lot of energy for it. And by the time I got it done, it took me 4 years to write it by myself, because I have 3 little kids, or they were littler kids at that time. And I had other stuff to do. It took me a long time. And I didn't have the time to market it right and have it be my focus. Because at that time I already started the IPO thing, and it was sort of wasn't as relevant to what I was doing. But it was a big accomplishment that I was really happy with. My mom hates it, but book, by the way.
How do you define success as an entrepreneur and as a partner?
I think it's funny. We sort of have this conversation every so often, right, at the firm, and we talk about, do we bring, more people on board? How are we going to do this? And my my approach to things in general are, more oars in the water, the faster you're going to row. Um, and the bigger ship you can carry. So again, my whole thing is, we're gonna grow, but we're gonna do it as a team. Um, and and if we're partners in this, we're all together. And we're gonna go out and we're gonna look out for each other, and we're gonna support each other, no matter what. I'm always one of my favorite scenes from a movie is A Beautiful Mind, with I forgot the other name. Anyway, he in the very beginning they go to a bar, and there's like five guys, and there's like, I think there's one girl, and the guy who the movie's about basically says, we could all try to get this girl, and compete with each other, and none of us are going to win. But if we all stick together and we have a coherent plan, one of us is going to win. And so, I like to have that mentality, and that is, if we're all working together, maybe one of us does better than the other, and that's okay. But if we do it as a team, we're gonna be way more successful if we try to than ourselves, by ourselves.
How would you like for people to remember you and your company?
Gosh, that's a oh my gosh, no, that's a new one. Um, I want people to remember me, as the guy that helped them, accomplish what that was really important to them. Whether that's the charity on the charity side, or whether they help their grandkids, or whether they set their kids up, for success, whatever it is. I want to be that instrumental player that sort of nobody really saw, except for the person that was there. And again, my role is not to be the star of the show. It's never, never, the star of the show should be the client. And I think similarly for our firm, I want our firm to be, what is considered the preeminent leader in IPO planning. That's what when people see our name, I'd be like, oh yeah, that's right. Those are guys that do the IPO planning. That's what I want.
What does the future of WRP Wealth look like to you?
Gosh, you're asking some really good questions today. We talk about that all the time. And we come from sort of the old world, broker dealer, eat what you kill model, and that works fine, but ultimately it's not scalable. And so I think we're starting to move away from it a little bit. So now we have more partner share. There is somewhat of an eat what you kill a little bit, because I think it keeps people interested in many respects. But for us, I think we're starting to shy away from that a little bit more, and so because we're starting to pool our resources a little bit more strategically and a little more coherently, we're starting to hire a couple more people. So we hired our first non-admin, non-partner role, just a couple months ago, with the vision of we're gonna hire, another probably a couple people in the next couple of years. So what my father-in-law, at some point he's gonna retire. He's 73 right now. He loves what he does. Maybe, he may die at the desk for all I know. It's, I want him to do what he loves to do. I don't want him to not do that. But at some point, right, we all have to stop working at some point, whether we like it or not, right? God is a plan, and it all ends the same way for all of us, and my father-in-law, yeah, I hope he lives another 40 years, as happy as he can. But at some point he's going to retire, and so we're starting to think about, what does our structure look like? How do we handle that sort of thing, as a group? And so I think in the next, hopefully the next 5 years, we're gonna we'll hopefully have 20, 25 employees, and we'll I remember the first time I sat down with our partner Jason, It was 2017, and our firm had like 350 million under management, and his firm had like 150 or so, maybe it was 200. And we sat down and we looked at each other and we said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to build $1 billion firm. That's what I want." And he said, "That's what I want too." And so that's what we've been going for. And the stock market has not helped us in the last few months, but I have every expectation that in 2 years we're going to be there. And we will be $1 billion firm. And then we got to decide what we're going to do next. And I think we want to keep on building out so that we're not that. I think the eat what you kill model will go away for us at some point, and we're going to build an enterprise level firm. And for us, that means, again, I don't want to build like a huge firm. Like I don't know. Again, I don't want too much inside baseball, but like there are some huge RIAs out there, right? Like Buckingham and Magnificent Mile and Allworth, these huge firms that, are rolling up advisors, and they have, hundreds of advisors, and they're private equity tied. And I'm just like, I don't want that. I want a 10 partner, maximum 10 partner firm. I actually probably want a 5 or 7 partner firm with like 40 employees. And, we're making tons of money. And the way we grow is by, taking our smaller clients and, helping them find other advisors, and we just keep taking on bigger clients, and keeping our quality really high, because that's always been important to our firm, is that quality maintains. So again, what's our future of our firm? I think we're going to be a 40 or 50 person firm, hopefully managing, in the neighborhood of 10, maybe 15 billion.
That's incredible. Aaron, thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed talking to you and getting to kind of understand more about your thought process, and just getting to learn and feel the enjoyment and the excitement that you get when you work with different companies and help them IPO and help them come to market. So, thank you for sitting down with me. I learned a lot, and I'm sure the listeners will really enjoy this episode too.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I love being here, and gosh, that logo on that shirt looks really good. That's pretty cool.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. All right, man. You have a great night.
All right, you too.